When Bakugou wakes up again, he's alone. Maybe he thinks he should just get used to it. He's done it for the entirety of his life up until this point, so it shouldn't feel as disappointing as it does when he looks over to find the pillows and blankets disheveled, but empty. His body feels heavy, mind foggy. It's probably later than he meant it to be by the looks of how bright the sun is shining through the curtains. Getting out of bed, it feels like he's been hit by a truck. Like he just finished an 18-hour shift at the firehouse and only just went to bed a few hours ago before having his alarm go off. Like wrecking his car a few days ago was finally taking its toll. Mentally and physically exhausted, but still he drags himself up and out of bed with his stomach being the driving force, just ahead of his irritation of being alone. The bathroom is empty after a quick inspection, so Bakugou pulls a blanket over his shoulders and shuffles out into the living room, which is also empty, but the soft echo of music does welcome him. It's soft, but he recognizes the song instantly. Last Christmas by Wham, a song which is practically on repeat over the course of the holiday season in every store he goes into. And here, even in the thick forested town hidden away in the mountains, it still haunts him. Typically he'd be annoyed. One of the things he hated most about Christmas, besides the overly affectionate people and the blinding decorations, was the music. The same list of songs on repeat over and over for a month straight every single year until you die. He's threatened physical violence on work shifts that had more than 1 hour of holiday songs playing over the speakers in their lounge, and Asa physically holding him back because Todoroki found it funny and Kami genuinely liked the overplayed melodies. Standing in the hallway just beyond the kitchen right now had him feeling an entirely different reaction. Hearing the stupid freaking song softly play out over a radio or phone filling up the space of the kitchen and din, but just behind it, a little off-key and softer even, is Kirishima's voice singing along. He doesn't want to hear it. He doesn't want to know what those words sound like when coming out of his mouth. But here he is, frozen in the hall, just listening to the offhand singing of Last Christmas in a manner that suddenly has his chest aching. The anger he felt upon waking up disappears. He schools his expression, clenches the blanket a little tighter in his grasp, and steps forward. There, in the kitchen, stands Kirishima, who looks much the same from the first morning Bakugou woke up in this house. He's shirtless, only in his boxers, stirring the contents of a bowl while singing. At his feet, Riot lays on the tile, making his owner dance around him. At the sight of Bakugou in the hallway, the dog lifts his head and lets out a boof of hello. Immediately, Kirishima turns around with a smile on his face to greet him. There's what appears to be a little bit of flour dusting his collarbone. "Morning, Bakugou. Merry Christmas." He smiles back at him.
"Merry Christmas."
It's genuine. He's not saying it out of obligation, he realizes. Not some automatic response to end a quick store-run interaction or the kind of grunted-out words he would say to his parents typically come this very morning last year or all the years before. No, he says it instead wanting to. Wanting someone to know for the first time in a very, very long time that it was supposed to be a time of celebration, that he was happy. Bakugou moves to lean over the kitchen island, peering in on what the other man could possibly be making while not wanting to get in the way. He's suspecting pancakes by the batter being beaten away in the bowl. There's a pan heating up on the stove, another right behind it that sizzles with bacon, and a pile of strawberries sits on a cutting board on the counter, washed and sliced into menacing-looking chunks. He smiles, looking up at Kirishima, who is back to whisking the batter in hand.
"Need help with anything?"
"Nope." Kirishima is quick to respond. "You just stay right there. You've been cooking for me all week, and I'm finally repaying you." Bakugou shakes his head.
"Promise it'll be an edible paycheck."
Kirishima grins. "I'll do my best." To his credit, it is. The pancakes themselves are a little too browned on one side, and Kirishima filled the pan with too much batter, making them squish together, but they're good. The bacon is crisp and the strawberries are ripe, and Bakugou has nothing bad to say at anything as they settle into Kirishima's little table nook and eat. "How are you feeling?" Kirishima asks as they start. It surprises Bakugou, but he doesn't let himself bristle like he typically would. He refuses to get defensive with him.
"Tired,"
he says honestly.
"I think I'm ready for a full night's sleep soon."
"I'm sure." I know all this hasn't been the easiest for you. We've just got a few more things to do today. Sero's cakes to drop off, and then we typically all get together for dinner. Kirishima starts to ramble. Bakugou watches him do so. It's the kind of mindless, filling up empty space sort of rambling where Kirishima doesn't seem to want the silence that could otherwise be in its place. Bakugou lets him. He lets him, and he just watches him speak for a minute, maybe it's 2, just to let his eyes gaze over the man that sits just across from him. He's still shirtless, sitting in the kitchen nook, unfazed by the winter chill that seeps in through the window so close by. The sun is shining brightly through the glass, gold falling across tan skin to make it shimmer. Bakugou looks at him from head to toe, making sure it's all saved forever to his memory.
Ichiro.
Bakugou interrupts. He stares down at his half-eaten plate, the pancakes having soaked up all the syrup pulled over them already. He doesn't even like sweets.
I'm going to leave tomorrow.
There's silence. Dead, heavy silence. He was almost expecting something more. Kirishima sighs. I know. They don't talk about it any further after that. They finish breakfast and move to get ready. Still, quietly, they take their time. They shower together again, slowly washing the other before pressing together for a kiss. Making out under the fall of water, grabbing at shoulders, arms, legs. Washing and rewashing just to continue touching with an excuse to do so. Not entirely wanting to be the one to say they're finished. It's when the water grows cold and they both start shivering, goosebumps breaking out under their fingers, that they finally decide to exit. It's a struggle to get dressed after that, to pull on their clothes, their shoes, for Kirishima to call Sero to say they're on their way when really, they don't truly want to leave or let go. But they do. They walk outside Kirishima's front door, lock it behind them, and head towards Kirishima's truck with Riot happily prancing through the new blanket of snow. They don't speak on it anymore out of desperation to ignore it and the clock that's now ticking down between them. But it's easy for them. Easy to ignore. To throw to the back of their minds and drive towards the motel like nothing is wrong. To park, get out of the car, and smile at Kirishima's friends like their time isn't limited. Throwing around Merry Christmas as everyone steps around each other, dancing in the small space of the diner's walkway. Sero has boxes upon boxes of cakes stacked up on the restaurant's counters, counting out each to check off a list he holds in his hand as Ashido and Kaminari tie red bows for decoration. Okay, so we have 25 going out, Sero states with a little clap as he finishes his list checking. Kirishima, Bakugou, here are your addresses. Kaminari, you're with us. Tetsu family, I'm begging you to drive like normal humans and not destroy my cakes. I was up all night decorating them. You spin out one time and mess up a few cakes. 7. You messed up 7. They were still edible, just a little ugly. More bickering ensues, Sero reprimanding Tetsu getting defensive, Ashido comforting Sero, Itsuka comforting Tetsu. Kaminari pipes in at one point to ask why he can't get a car to just go by himself to make it faster, and 5 other voices pipe up that he's not safe on the road after and while it's snowing out. Apparently, there's a lot of voice concerns wondering how he made it up here in the first place, and then Kaminari is the one to get defensive, snapping back that he's a perfectly good driver, that he's never spun out and ruined any cake. It starts all over again. There's no true venom in anyone's voice, as it all goes around in a big circle of how dare you and storytelling of past Christmas cake deliveries. Bakugou watches from the edges of it all, looking in. He listens to the conversations overlapping one another as best he can, and wonders how this strange circle of people have kept their friendship so well over these years of growing up. There's something akin to jealousy that starts to eat away in his stomach, but that's not quite right. It's this sudden ache to not be on the outside, to want to know the inside jokes and be a part of the stories they all seem to be fond of talking about. A fleeting feeling of longing where he can't be. Eventually, they all calm down and grab up cakes, armfuls of boxes as much as each can be carried out to cars and trucks, careful to place them in back seats and, in some cases, strap them down so they don't shift too much. Bakugou finds his lap piled with cake boxes, having been given the job of quality control to keep them safe. There are a few down at his feet as well, carefully placed so he cannot easily kick them, but still warned nonetheless. Kirishima holds their list of addresses, driving off as the other groups split off into various parts of town from their assignments. It's only a few minutes down the road that Bakugou suddenly remembers his conversation days ago with Sero, the realization of somehow shoehorning himself into this tradition.
Did you deliver these with your mom when she was alive?
Kirishima's eyes don't leave the road, so Bakugou can't see his expression fully, but the corner of his mouth does twitch up. Yeah, every Christmas morning. After breakfast, we'd all pile into the car and drive around giving people cake. Sero did it with his grandma, too. She's technically the one that started it all. At first it was just neighbors, you know. People close by and an extra cake or two. But people loved them and some people couldn't do it themselves, so we started a full-blown delivery service. He says. No charge or anything. They just liked baking, liked giving and sharing. Sign-ups start in October if people want one, and we drive them out every Christmas so people can have it with their families. Giving, sharing, the community looking out for one another and being kind just to be kind. Bakugou can see the appeal. They drive down one street into a small neighborhood lined with older houses that look like they're being swallowed up by the snow. All dotted along the hillside with Christmas lights just shining through with fresh white fall from the previous night. Trees scattered among them, barren and white, some with lights of their own. There's decorations of deer and Santas just like the one on Main Street, though not as enthusiastic or abundant. They drive slowly and stop at each listed house, Bakugou handing over one cake at a time for Kirishima to carefully jog up to doors and knock. He hands each box over with a smile and a small conversation. Each townsfolk took the time to speak with him, though Bakugou could not tell what was being said from his place still in the car, but he could imagine. Holiday pleasantries, then asking about Kirishima, how he's doing, his brother, his dad. The possibility of awkward fumbling over the mention of his mom or all-out blatancy of an apology for her loss still. A small prayer, a request to maybe come by and shovel snow whenever he could, after the holiday, before the new year. Bakugou can see elderly couples in doorways or parents with babies on their hips, toddlers with grabby hands snatching up the box of cake before their parents, dashing off back into the house to rip it open. Kirishima carves out time for each and every one of them, not looking to rush anyone, not minding as he stands out in the snow for however long it takes. He's kind, caring, wants nothing more than to make the rest of his community happy in any way he possibly can. Bakugou knows he shouldn't hate an entire town, but he's growing more irritated with them by the second. He wants to be greedy, but knows he can't. Alright, just 2 more. Kirishima says, jumping back into the truck to heat up his hands for a few moments. I'm gonna run this one up here. Do you think you could maybe take the last one next door for me? Bakugou sputters, trying not to make a face as he hands over one of the 2 cakes left. Honestly, he doesn't want to. The truck is warm. He doesn't know these people. Why would he want to go greet one with a cake? Don't worry. Kirishima is quick to pipe in. Apparently, Bakugou couldn't hide his distaste fast enough. It's just Dr. Shuzenji. You'll be fine. He leaves little room to argue as he's gone from the truck in the blink of an eye, practically running up the walkway of his last house. With a sigh, Bakugou makes sure his scarf is tightly coiled around his neck before exiting the truck. He trudges up the sidewalk to knock on the door, cake in hand, hoping for a quick departure. Oh, I wasn't expecting you. The woman who answers the door is smaller than Bakugou remembers. Much of that night is a blur in his head already. He can only recall the pain, the aches, and the annoyance of nearly dying. But Dr. Shuzenji is small, a shawl wrapped around frail shoulders and a walking stick in her hand.
I'm helping Kirishima out,
he says.
Merry Christmas.
The words come out robotically as he tries to hand over the box and turn tail, but she doesn't take it, instead turning to wave him into the house as she shuffles off down the hall. Reluctantly, he follows, feeling more awkward the further and further he gets into her house. The place is all stone and wood, old but warm with a fire smoldering in a living room he passes. There are pictures on the walls, old black and whites of people looking stoic at a camera that's still a new function of the time. There are a few more modern ones, the colors in them slightly off and faded. But these, there are young women in them all smiling, posing for the shots in living rooms and by creeks. Shirt sleeves and pants tied up high, hair pulled back, walking down rocky paths in the woods. I see you're feeling much better. The cut on your forehead you've been taking care of?
Yes, ma'am.
He remembers his manners as they stop in her kitchen. He places the box on her counter, watching how she pulls the stool out to step up, happily tearing open the box to reveal the strawberry shortcake within. It's all still neat, perfectly iced and piped with the strawberries sliced and placed upon mounts of whipped cream with more strawberries piled high in the center. She swipes a finger through the perfectly made whipped cream topping, messing up the symmetry of the cake to pop the dollop into her mouth. That Kana's boy does do the good stuff. Took him ages to get it right. She talks to him like he knows who Kana is, like he knows Sero's struggles in making his grandmother's cake correctly. He thinks maybe that's just a give with this place, that so many people never change that it's not uncommon to speak as if everyone around you knows the history. It's not strange. From the sounds of things, it's not usual to have new people come to stay for long. It's not usual to have to explain the past. Bakugou feels more and more like he needs to leave. Here. Dr. Shuzenji grabs his hand in a strong grip, unforgiving as she curls his fingers open and places 2 little wrapped candies into his palm. Tell Kirishima he should be at home. Boy has a guest for the first time and he thinks he needs to spend the day running errands. On Christmas. His mother is cursing him, I'm sure. Bakugou looks up at her, blinking.
His mother?
Yes, all she ever wanted was those 2 to be happy, and he's still around delivering cakes and shoveling driveways. You tell him to go home. Her tone is unquestioning, forcing another yes ma'am from his lips before she's bringing him back out the front door, candy in hand, and a message to pass on. All finished? Kirishima asks once he's back in the truck. Bakugou glares softly, handing over one of the wrapped candies which Kirishima happily takes and pops into his mouth, a peppermint.
Yeah, I just got scolded for you.
Really?
She said you work too much.
He laughs in return, heading back towards the inn, not fearing any wrath from the doctor at all. But Bakugou doesn't forget her words as they make their way back. It's made even more evident when, upon returning and eating a light lunch, Kirishima heads outside with a shovel from his truck to start clearing the pathways of the inn. It's not asked, unprompted, and Bakugou just sits on his stool in the diner watching him shovel snow. Since he's been here, he noticed that Kirishima hasn't stopped. Beyond the actual force of nature that was a blizzard to keep him pinned down, Kirishima doesn't appear to like being in one place for long. He runs around town doing things for people near constant, not appearing to want to stay still long enough to do much else. Even the moments they've had together, alone, private, was because they were driving or the night had fallen. So there was little else to do.
Ashido.
He calls out, still staring at Kirishima slowly piling the snow up along the edges of the sidewalk.
Why does he do that?
She comes out from the kitchen, a teapot in hand, and pours a few mugs full. Do what?
Keep working.
She follows his gaze to peer out the window, watching Kirishima move up and down the inn to clear the path. Oh, it's a distraction. It keeps his mind occupied. He doesn't talk about it anymore.
Anymore?
She pauses, sighs. After everything that happened with his mom, he never really, I suppose, processed is the right word. It's not like he ignored it, but he just kept moving, working, anything to distract himself, but that's all it is. He stays in one place, but he keeps moving in circles. He watches Kirishima pause in his clearing, putting the shovel up against the wall and kneel down into the small snow pile he has created, starting to press it all together into a ball. He does it again with more snow, packing as much as he can into it before piling the 2 on top of each other. It's all crunchy, lopsided, smudged gray from the snow in the walkway, but still, Kirishima pokes out 2 little holes and carves a curved smile onto the makeshift snowman's face. He stands back and Bakugou catches him smiling, hands on his hips, looking proud at his strange little creation. He's the happiest I've seen him in a long time since you've come here. Bakugou sputters, turning to face Ashido, who's not even looking at him, but staring much like him at Kirishima, who's far too pleased with the snowman.
I didn't mean to, you know.
She snorts. Didn't need to be on purpose. I'm still happy you're here. He's happy you're here. He doesn't have the heart to say anything to that. He's a stranger that was never meant to have these interactions. He's supposed to be up in a ski resort avoiding his parents for a week and staying up on a mountain until the dark makes it dangerous and his legs want to give out under him. He's never supposed to have met Kirishima or Ashido or any of the rest of them. He's just a coincidence, making it worse by intermingling. Bakugou was never meant to be here, which means he's never meant to stay. Bakugou cannot voice how this happiness is not permanent. They don't go back to Kirishima's house. They stick around with this group of old-time friends to play games, sing songs, and day drink a little. They end up out in the empty streets of downtown, running through the day-old snow, crunching new paths in the ice, and falling down in piles to make monstrous snow angels smeared across the street. Eventually, the rainbow of streetlights flicker on with the setting sun, making the disappearing light almost not even matter beyond reminding them they should eat. Sero and Ashido head in first, with Ashido shoving her ice-cold hands under Sero's shirt, making him yelp, shoving at his girlfriend, who laughs even as his cold hands grab at her cheeks in payback. Tetsu and Itsuka are next to follow their stomachs, and Kaminari soon after that, complaining of the night getting colder as his nose burns red. And there, together, leaves Kirishima and Bakugou, laying in the middle of the snow-covered street, watching the sky above them slowly turn from pale blue to dark. The stars coming out to pinprick the sky. Their breath spirals above them on every exhale, coiling up to dissipate as they continue to look onward. They lay just close enough that their hands touch outstretched. The cold is starting to seep in. Bakugou's back feels numb even through his layers. He can feel how his shoulders are starting to shiver with it. His stomach rumbles. He moves to stand, but Kirishima's hands grip his, holding him, keeping him still. "Not yet," he says in a whisper. "Not yet." They eat. It's not a quiet affair, but Bakugou can't help but feel choked. He wants to tell Kirishima they should leave, but doing so would likely break whatever spell this is, so he sucks it up. He eats everything that is served, even if it's tasteless in his mouth. Even the cake, one that has clearly been made with an extra layer of sponge compared to the others delivered earlier that morning, is like mush on his fork. He hates it. He knows it's good, but with that knowledge and the time that keeps ticking away, he feels like he simply can't bring himself to enjoy it. He finishes it still, wipes his plate clean, and manages a smile of some sort all the same. When they arrive back at Kirishima's, the lights are on. The display illuminates the entire yard and looks just as beautiful as it had the night before. Bakugou packs. He's not sure if faster or slower is better in this instance, which means he just sits there staring at jeans and socks for far, far too long until finally, somehow he blinks and all his belongings are put back in the bags they came in. Stacked up in the spare bedroom that he hasn't slept in for a few nights. He makes his way towards the other side of the house, blanket thrown over his shoulders in a manner that feels natural, and climbs into Kirishima's bed with him. Laying atop his chest and their legs tangled together under the blankets. Everything is warm. The weight of Kirishima next to him feels familiar. It's cruel to do this to them both at this point.
"Hey,"
Bakugou says, breaking the silence they're under.
"I'm going to ask you one more thing.
Yeah?
Just stay here until I wake up. Actually, stay."
Bakugou feels the rumble of soft laughter through his chest. Okay. Only because it's still technically Christmas. It's a joke that Bakugou doesn't believe for a second. Still, he wraps his arms around Kirishima, settles in, and falls asleep holding on to him. Just in case. When he does wake up, Kirishima is still next to him, sleeping, snoring softly, hair in his face. He has one arm thrown up over his head and the other thrown across Bakugou's waist. His movements wake him up. Kirishima lets out a little groan, huffs, then drags Bakugou in with both hands to bury his face against his neck, mumbling something into his skin about it still being early, which it's not, but Bakugou is kind enough to say nothing. They stay like that a while longer, just until the sun looks bright and warm, and Riot insists on not being ignored any longer. Slowly they rise. They change. They head outside. There's no breakfast, no burnt coffee or helping hand in the kitchen, or sitting at a table for two with the forest being their view outside. Kirishima helps Bakugou pack his bags in the car as Bakugou remembers which pocket he put his keys in. Nothing is lost or forgotten or left behind. Bakugou corrects the position of his seat before starting up the engine, which comes to life with a quiet rumble, sounding like there would be no reason not to. Still, there's a pause. A moment after everything is settled, right before Bakugou puts the car into reverse to pull out of the driveway, through town, and back towards the highway. He looks up at Kirishima, who looks at him, the pair staring in the cold morning air the day after Christmas. Kirishima is the first one to break the quiet. He smiles. Bakugou would be disappointed if he did anything less. "It was fun," he says. Bakugou feels his chest tighten as he replies.
"Yeah, it was."
Kirishima leans forward to close the distance between them, kissing him one last time. Both of their lips are chapped from the cold, sticking together as the moisture is quick to connect and want to freeze, but is easily broken as they pull away. One more. Just one more to remember it by. "Thank you," Kirishima says against his lips. "For everything." Bakugou cracks his own smile, sharp. He tries.
"I think that's my line."
They break apart. Kirishima backs away, the distance between them feeling so much more than the 5 steps Kirishima takes. Bakugou puts his car in reverse and pulls away, the distance growing further. He can't manage to look in his rearview mirror to watch Kirishima wave him goodbye. Can't manage looking back to see the handmade cabin in the woods, covered in Christmas lights, and feeling like home disappear beyond the tree line as he turns down the road. He keeps his eyes straight, focused, and unwavering as not to look at the other homes speckled in the hills, or the street that would lead downtown where he's sure Ashido and Sero and Kaminari still sleep. Even as his vision grows blurry and tears slowly slide down his cheeks, Bakugou simply grips the steering wheel tighter and pushes his foot down against the pedal harder. He can feel the sharp edges of his heart stabbing into his lungs. He follows the signs towards the highway, down the mountains, and towards his entire life below. Bakugou doesn't look back. He drives on.